So, welcome back to the Intermat Wrestling Podcast. Today, it is a tripod instead of a quad, where it is just myself, Austin, and Robbie. I believe Kevin is recording Blood Round today, so he's not going to jump in on the fun as we discuss the goings on at the World Team Trials last weekend. Um, and for me, the story of all of it, even though he lost in the finals, was Marcus Blaze continues to up his stock. Um, when I looked at the brackets, you're like, okay, I don't know how well he's going to do against some of these guys. Specifically, I was looking at his match with Seth Gross because Gross is very unorthodox, and Gross has been able to put up a number of points on guys on NCAA champions, right? On guys that are certainly way more seasoned than Blaze. And he was able to get that come from behind win. And then he was also able to beat Nashon, who I think we would argue outside of Vito is one of the most dynamic, or at least was one of the most dynamic scorers in that bracket. So for me, it was Marcus Blaze. What did you guys make of this 17-year-old who is just like kind of been lighting things up since he qualified for the Olympic trials and took third, and then he was bronze at U20s and gets off of that, returns to the United States, I believe, on Monday, and he's right in the mix with the senior world team trials. What did you guys make of Blaze's performance, even with a loss to Vito in the end?
I expected him to maybe win a couple matches, and then hit some of the better guys and fall out like high school student would normally fall out against the top senior guys. But he looked fantastic from the opening whistle. I mean, he had a tough second round match with Gross, looked fantastic, managed the match really well. Then shut down Nashon, which is not an easy thing to do. And then took care of Fix, who's also can be a very dynamic offensive wrestler when he opens up, which he
Mm-hmm.
had for most of the tournament. Like he was pretty active, but he looked fantastic. Certainly did not wrestle like a high schooler. Um, it shows us the depth that we have and that we are in a good position moving forward with the talent we have at the younger levels.
Yeah. Austin, your thoughts on Blaze?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we talk about it with the other high school guys too. He's really, really good at wrestling, obviously, right? And it just shows he doesn't fear any of these guys either, which I think is, something that, him, Jax Forrest, Bo Bassett, they want to wrestle these top guys. They're not shying away from this competition. And you're knocking out multiple NCAA All-Americans, NCAA champs, and, former world team members as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid. It's just incredible to me. I think he's making the case for, best high school wrestler in the country right now. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's very far off. And, we all talk about Bo Bassett this, Bo Bassett that with his recruiting trail, but I think Marcus Blaze should be up there in that conversation as well. Maybe he doesn't have the marketability that, we talk about ad nauseum here about Bo Bassett, but I think he makes the case for the best high school wrestler at the moment right now in America.
The marketability for Marcus Blaze is winning and
Yeah.
going out there and doing things that the rest of these guys are not doing. Like you said, we talk about everything that Bo Bassett is doing from standpoint of his website and doing this video and hosting this guy, taking pictures with, this team and this coach and whatever else. Blaze is like, okay, that's cool. I'm gonna go out here and beat multiple NCAA champions and do it in impressive fashion. I mean, like you said, he didn't let Nashon Garrett score a point. This is a guy who has made a world team or didn't compete at worlds because of injury, but made a world team and has won NCAA titles. Like, this isn't just some guy. This entire field that, once you got to a certain point, obviously, the entire field was nothing but All Americans, was nothing but guys that have been on the podium, if not on the top of it or close to the top of it. So for me, when I look at how this kid has really started to blaze his own trail, literally pun intended, it's been him winning. And it's been him taking out these guys in clutch moments, took out Gross in a clutch moment, took out Fix in a clutch moment, was dangerously close to doing the same thing to Vito in match one, right? Like, and in match two.
Yeah, both super
It's
tight.
exactly like it's the wrestling IQ for me that is what is just otherworldly, right? Because any one of these guys can go out and get a trap arm and or lace a guy up, and you're like, oh well, he got to a double and right into a lace and just kept rolling. When none of those things were happening, it's the mat savvy, it's the circling back in, it's the holding center. He wasn't fully aggressive though. I will say that against Fix, against Vito, was not very aggressive. Was definitely playing for the walk off, right? Like
Mhm.
was definitely waiting till that bottom of the ninth type of thing. And that was the thing where I'm like, these things are going to come because we see how he is competing or competed against Gross and Nashon. But the matches against Fix where he was able to go out and get it, even though he was not the aggressor until he needed to be, was impressive for me.
I think you see the tactics there, though. I mean, and that speaks to his IQ is that, Fix and Vito are both can be prolific counter offensive wrestlers. And if you
Mhm.
make a little mistake against either of them, they're going to capitalize on it and it's going to be over. So you saw a more tentative approach, but it wasn't like a scared tentative approach. It was a tactical tentative. So I think that, speaks to, like you said, his wrestling IQ is savvy. Um, I thought the thing that impressed me most, and you kind of hit on it, was his positioning and his awareness of his
Yeah.
of his position on the mat. And that's something that usually doesn't come until much later in the career with a lot of international experience with the way it's being called. But he's on top of his game there already. I mean, honestly, some of our senior guys could learn some lessons from there.
Yeah. Yeah. There were definitely some moments from the guys that have been on the scene for a very long time that it's old Matt savvy. And I'm speaking specifically of chance and grounding, right? We'll get to 79, but when you compare how Marcus Blaze was on the edge of the mat, or at least when he's in the danger zone, it was very different from some of the guys who have a lot more experience. Um, but Austin, like you mentioned, these very young athletes, my prayer from my mouth to God's ears, right, is that they all end up in different weight classes. Because right now we have Forrest as well as Blaze in the same weight class basically every single time. And my hope is that next time around, and I'm guessing it'll be next senior trials, Jax Forrest maybe goes 57 and because he's a bit smaller than Blaze, and Blaze is at 61. Um and remember they're both 17, so plenty of time for them to grow into the 65, the 74s, the 86s with PJ Duke and with Bo Bassett being, some bigger guys in there. But man, I'm hoping that they become the next, Taylor, Dake, Burroughs that we have. It's going to take a little bit, and for these guys, they're already ahead of the curve. They're more on that Kyle Snyder track of wrestling up and wrestling this top competition in the world. Um, but man, I tell you what, 61, and you could probably say this about every single weight in men's freestyle. It was pretty electric. The match that I wanted to make sure that I was honing in on, and to bring up another one of these guys, is Jax Fars versus Austin DeSanto. And DeSanto looked very good. He was off of that tight C grip on the back of the tricep. He was trying to score some points, but Jax Farsar also didn't back down, right? So that match for me was one of the ones early on. I think that was what, a quarter final from looking at the brackets.
Second half.
Yeah, that was a big one that I was just like, if we're gonna get these youngsters battling again, it's gonna be one of them, beating one of these guys and winning here, right? So, but yeah, just that was what was most impressive to me outside of um how Vito came in and handled, a 17-year-old the way that he did. But the 17-year-olds really truly stepping up and doing the things that they did and beating these guys that have been on the senior level or at least competing at the NCAA level for a very long time. Do you guys have any thoughts on 61? Anybody else kind of stand out to you?
I liked how Fix looked until the finals. It was nice to see him kind of getting after it. I think we went from seeing freestyle young Dayton Fix who was super aggressive and scoring lots of points and throwing that inside trip and putting people on their back to a much more controlled defensive wrestler in college who didn't score nearly as many points. So it's nice to see him kind of back opening that up. And kind of makes you wonder what's it going to look like after a year with David Taylor and the new coaching staff there versus working with Smith and being under the same program for 6 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just thought it was, I mean, just to kind of put the bow on Blaze a little bit too. It was incredible to see him beat a guy like Seth Gross, who is just so unorthodox, so unique, like you mentioned, Holmes, so different in the way he wrestles, and just a lot of times guys got to feel a guy like that out before they beat him. And then the same with Nishan Garrett, that guy is so fast, so powerful, and just for Blaze to blank him like that after I don't think he's ever wrestled him before, which again,
Mhm.
that's a guy I feel like you got to really feel out because you can watch all the film on him, but till you feel that double, you feel that speed, it's completely different. It's just hats off to Blaze for a great tournament. It's just incredible.
Yeah, the strength and the IQ really sticks out. And on the Dayton Fix thing, man, like you're right, Robbie. He looked in the finals against Blaze, he looked the way he did when everyone was booing him at NCAAs. And I
Yeah.
think that's like the biggest just like gripe that everybody has about him is we see how well and how much you can score. We've known about the inside trip since you were 15
Mhm.
and you've continued to perfect it and get very, very good at it to the point where you're still able to hit that same inside trip at this point. And understandably so that he didn't want to go after it against a guy like Blaze who has proved to at such a young age, can't say that enough, has proved to have the strength and the savvy to combat those things. But man, you can't allow to sound like the elder statesman. You can't allow the young kid to come in and just battle you like that. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
so it's just like, man, why are you shutting down your offense? Why are you being defensive when we know how much you can score? When we know how much you can get through a shot and not only that, like this is freestyle, not folk style, where you need to be super controlled to score points. Get through a shot. We know you have that high crotch. We've seen you get through it, get to it, like get those hands active and start scoring the points that we know you can score. So that was the thing for me is like Dayton looked very good in those earlier round matches and the match with him and Bailey, I was like, man, this could be a pretty dynamic, high scoring match. But
It
Dayton
was
just
for
controlled.
Dayton.
Yeah, he controlled the bout, right? Like he really controlled the bout, and it really wasn't a thing. You're like, okay, freestyle Dayton is here. He's in his normal weight class of 61, but it's like as soon as you get, it's like a flying too close to the sun thing. He's like, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the next step. And it's like, no, focus, be where your feet are. Focus right now where you're at. Go score points. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the guy scoring points on you. If you're scoring points and he's scoring on you, inevitably, it's either going to wash or you're just going to continue to score and he's not going to want to wrestle you anymore. But when you give a guy confidence like that to say, I'm matching strength for strength with a 4-time NCAA finalist and I'm 17, I feel like I can compete with anyone, and
Yeah.
Blaze obviously has that confidence already. Not to say that he needs to be helped out, but like when you do things like that, you're going to give a guy more confidence. And that's, you saw Blaze getting more and more confident as that match went on. Um, so yeah. I think we all did pick Vito on that one though. I don't think that any of us. I think most of us went 4 for 4. I think Claunch was the only one that probably didn't go 4 for 4 because of pick going
his
homer status
his
with
bias.
Pantelio.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
fair.
mean, yeah, happens. But 70, I don't know, man. It's good to
Look,
see.
70 was so wild that Will Lewan was scoring points. So that's
Yeah,
how you know it's crazy when that's happening.
exactly. Everyone was scoring points, and Andonian looked great. He was seconds away from beating Jo, but Jo doing the things that Jo does and comes up clutch, right? Like what can you really say? He says he's going to continue to do both MMA and wrestling. If Bellator and PFL is going to let him do it, so be it. Go, have at it. But like, make sure that you're able to be healthy because the contract with Bellator or PFL a little bit different than the one with USA Wrestling. USA Wrestling's like, yep, you're good. Come on in, right? Like, very
Here's your
different.
$12 check.
Exactly. Exactly. There's a lot
I
more
think it's
money tied up
12.50
in
now with inflation.
in PFL and everything else. So, I mean, it was good to see him back on the mat. Hopefully, he does continue to compete and get better. But man, I tell you what, the 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 man with the new hip in his old weight class, he's damn good. He's damn
Yeah.
good. And I remember I think somebody tweeted and asked like was this underhook always in James Green's arsenal or was this something new? I think it was always there, but I think he's
Mhm.
gotten better at it now to the point where he's truly using it to control matches and I love it. And I think he looked amazing in that entire match.
I think for his walkout at Worlds, he needs to bring the cane back and just really play it up. He looked amazing. Like this is the James Green that we know is there. This is the world finalist James Green,
Hmm.
and he looked every bit of it from the first match on. And I mean, it's great to see him healthy. It's great to see him happy and competing again. I know it was really tough for him going through that injury, going through the hip issues, and feeling like he couldn't compete and couldn't be at 100%. So being back full go for him is awesome, and it's great for the U.S. too because he's damn good.
Yeah. He fully Willy Wonka us, man. I've tweeted that gif. Willy Wonka, he limped out with the cane, then he rolled and gave us the old okey doke, and he's back on the world team. So no, I think he looked really good. Austin, your thoughts on 70 or James Green or anyone in the field?
Yeah, I think I did pick Pantaleo as well. Um,
Well, that's where you went wrong.
yeah, that didn't work out well. He started off a little slow.
He did.
Yeah, didn't
Very,
look great. Yeah, not sure if that was a weight cut thing or if he's a little banged up, but yeah, I mean James Green, like you guys said, he's the old James Green. It was great to see Jo back. That duck under he hit the last minute, I think was against Andonian.
Yeah, that made me
Really
mad.
slick,
I
really
heard,
cool match.
I heard Robbie's heartbreak all the way from here.
What's funny is I
I
was
heard a big
talking to
scream.
Ethan. I was talking to Ethan Agigi after the match. He's like, "Yeah, that's what happens. Have a stalling bone in your body." So it's like, "Yeah, that's right. He's going to keep going, and he's going to put himself in that position." I mean, tactically not great, but it's how he goes. It's always 100%, whether that's for him or against him. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even think he was just staying engaged, right? Like that's
mhm.
that's more so what he's trying to stave off is the warnings and the fleeing and everything else. So, hat off to him that he's trying to stay engaged because most guys they get there, they're not trying to stay engaged, right? Like, excuse me, like give me a warning, right? Like I'm gonna milk the clock and I'm gonna, put some skates on, get my running shoes on and do what I gotta do to get out of
Now they
this.
could
And
have taken a point even.
Yeah,
he
say he was
could
up by
he
two, right?
was up
Yeah.
by two. He certainly could have, and I mean, I think I love his game plan against Jo to go out and score early and just try to build on that. And he did. He built on that lead and did the things that he needed to do to build his lead. And it just, the Jo duck under,
It's
you know,
that wily veteran. Just
he's he's
hanging
he's
around,
had that
hanging
damn duck
around,
under
hanging
since we
around.
were little kids, and it's just been getting better and better, and you could you could kind of see it coming. I think he hit Molinaro with that at Bill Farrell in, I want to say 2016, 2017, maybe. Um, to beat him then, right? So it's something that he knows he can go to that well late in the match when, guys are leaning a little bit more. But yeah, certainly good to see him back. But the definitely the talk of the town is James Green. Um, but as you said, Pantelio, he got a slow start, 3-3 to start in the first round, and then the next one I think
Against
he won by a point.
2-0
Um,
against Yaya. Like
yeah,
I
so
never even
like
heard of the first guy. No, nothing against whoever D
yeah, what's his
Morton is,
name? Morton. Yeah, I had no
but
idea,
not somebody
but
that Pantaleo should be 3-3 with.
not when you're the top seed and he's the
Nope.
16.
Yo.
Like
But
that
Yaya
was
looked good this weekend.
yeah, yeah. If you ask his dad, he looks superhuman. Um,
To be fair, he does that in losses too.
he does, yeah. So I mean, no, I'll never discredit a guy that goes out there and wrestles his ass off, but you know he he was up against it, wrestling against Pantelio, who's very hard to score on, very hard to get to. Um, so yeah, I think Pantelio is a guy that he's he's right there. And hearing that James Green was coming back had to give him an upset stomach because it's like JO's gone, Green's gone. All right, like this has got to be my time, right? Like, knowing that Zane is probably not gonna be sticking around too. Like the weight class is clearing out. Um, but I think his chance will definitely come. He's 28 as opposed to Jo being what 34 and James Green being 31. Um, shout out to the plus 30 crowd that's repping our freestyle team. Um, you gotta
Talk
love
about the
it.
plus 40 crowd when we get to Greco. We'll talk about my world.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was certainly good to see these guys back as healthy as they possibly can be. In true Jo fashion, he's fighting all different types of demons to get out back on the mat, but he was out there and but he was just didn't have enough. I think he's only beaten James Green one time. Um, and so he's just always going to be kind of up against it in that regard. So, um, I don't know. I as much as I want to believe that he's going to stick around and continue to compete, 2028, that's tough, bro. That's a tough one to get to when he's what 38 years old, I believe, 37 at that point. Um, so that's tough. I mean, we do see Burroughs doing it right now, but he looked superhuman and
That's a different thing.
I'm gonna
You
segue
can't
straight
compare yourself to
into it.
Jordan Burroughs. That's just not.
Exactly.
It's like trying to fountain youth somewhere.
And let's jump to 79. And this is something that I tweeted because it was, me being the from the boxing family that I'm from. His approach to these matches was Roy Jones esque, was Mayweather esque, where and you really saw it up against Ringer, where it was a
Mhm.
stick and move type of a
Yeah.
thing. I'm gonna pop shoulders. I'm gonna hand replace. And I had a text from somebody that said when they allow JB to use his hands, he is very dangerous. When they try to stop him from some jab hand replace type things, it kind of takes away his arsenal. But I think the footwork, not wrestling guys in a phone booth, if he's gonna be in the tie up, he's not sticking around in the tie. So that was the what was most impressive to me was from Olympic trials and even from last year wrestling Chance, he had a lot more urgency. Chance was able to score on JB's lack of urgency and kind of laziness coming out of his attacks. There was a lot
Mhm.
of time when Chance would get back in on a leg, when JB would take a shot and not get to a leg and take his time getting back up to his feet. That's when Chance was attacking. This time, he was hard to track down. You saw it. Chance would go one way and he would go another. Like it was, it kind of looked like the end of the Falcons Eagles game last night. I'm going to take a shot at Austin a little bit on that one. With Drake London and Slay, he went one way and he went the other way. Like it was hard to track these guys down because he continued to pop shoulders, hand replace. He was keeping his hands high too, so he wasn't getting anything where it was any hands to the face and eyes, stuff like that. And a lot of level changes. He never really knew when he was actually going to shoot. He got to that double on Chance, and it was literally the same position that they were in Newark. The only difference now is that they were in the middle of the mat, and he planted Chance as Chance rolled him through. So it was a 4-2, which is probably what it should have been scored when it was on the edge of the mat as well. It just so
Yeah.
happened it was on the edge of the mat, so they scored it differently. But I was very impressed. I was really impressed with his movement. I thought that was like the number one thing for me because everything else he's always had in his arsenal. And not to say he didn't have the movement, but that was what was like spotlighted for me. It was all the footwork and all the jabbing. It was very boxer esque for me when it came to all his movement. What were your guys' thoughts on JB?
I think with that, you're kind of seeing like the adjustments and the mental side of it that he knew he had to fix, right? Because for so long he's been separated himself so much from everyone else that he was able to get away with not using that domestically. And we saw him use similar tactics, internationally, and that's part of the big reason of his success. But domestically, he didn't have to until he started getting pushed by Dake, and recently with Marsteller. So it's nice to see him recognize the need for that, and impressive that he can still make that adjustment so well, at his age. He's younger than me, so I can't say too much. But for, high level freestyle wrestler, is he 38 now?
He's
That's
36.
36. I mean, that's some miles. So it's nice to see that he can still make those adjustments and be so disciplined to continue that. Because you saw one time in the finals that Chance did get in on that reshot, and Burroughs like immediately reacted to it rather than allowing it like he had previously.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there just seemed to be so many factors that we kind of touched on last time. The Penn State, where the way he left State College put a really bad taste in his mouth, like he said in the interview, kind of, little revenge there. I think the rematch against Marsteller was another one that he's been probably thinking of, right? And just being back home in Nebraska, I think all that trifecta there, whatever you want to call it, really put him over the edge mentally and gave him that extra little bit of oomph to, you know, to get it done. And, if we're being honest, are we going to see Jordan Burroughs after Worlds? My bet would probably be
I
maybe
think
not,
it
probably not.
depends
I
on
don't
how he
know.
goes out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing too. Like this really, I think he's thinking, hey, this could be my last time ever on a mat professionally as an athlete, and I don't want to go out like I did in Penn State. I want to go
Yeah.
out on top, So again, just kind of my thought there, but I think there were some big factors leading up to that.
Yeah.
I think there's a very real chance that if we see Jordan Burroughs win a belt, um, that's going to be the last time we see him,
I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, and we'll
which
get to
which
his
sucks.
interview a little
But
bit later,
yeah,
but I want to talk about the rest of the field. Ringer, man, I tell you what, and I talked to Ringer at Final X last year, after he won to place third, and he had said, "Man, I'm 30. I want to get on to coaching." He's already obviously coaching at Michigan. He's like, I want to be a dad at some point, and I'm just got married, all these things. He's like, I can't do this forever. He's like, I don't want to do this till I'm 36. Um, so when he lost, I was sitting there and I was like, oh, he's definitely taking his shoes off here. So that was something that I was prepared for going into that match because I've had so many conversations with him, not just at Final X, but shot him a text, that night as well. And, just he's always been, and I want to just like kind of give him some more praise. I know a lot of people have been keeping a lot of praise on Ringer, but he's an awesome human being. Like an awesome, like every time I see him, it's a handshake and a hug. It's always conversation. It's never just like passing by. And he has been such a beast on the mat and just like a perennial power, man. Like NCAAs, I can remember watching him at NCAAs and I'm like, this man is in cruise control with these guys. It is not even a thing, especially when he won that third one. And him and I have the same sports psychologist. The guy that I used to go to helps Michigan. Name is Jared Spencer, and he's always with Michigan at NCAAs. He's with them basically everywhere. And we were having a conversation at the U.S. Open in Dallas about it, where I said to Ringer once, I said that third year, your third national title, it barely looked like you were trying. He's like, yeah, he was like, I was just cruising. He's like, I was in like such better shape. And Jared asked him, he was like, well, why were you cruising? Like, why? And he was like, because I knew there was nobody out there that could touch me. And it was just like, he just knew it. And, seeing him be like such a humble champion and just kind of like, that was, I think, the most bragging I think he ever really did was when I asked him that question. So, hats off to Ringer. Love to see him compete at all times. And I think he's going to be a phenomenal coach. He already probably is. You probably just don't see it yet because he's been focused on his own competition career, but I think he's going to be a phenomenal coach. He's got, such a wealth of knowledge. So, it was kind of bittersweet to see him take his shoes off because I was like, man, he's ready to be on the other side in the corner and not be competing. But man, we're definitely losing a guy that, I think if he's in a different weight class or, there's a couple guys that aren't ahead of him, he could have been at the top of the world podium as well.
Great. Also, one of those rare people who their hair got better throughout their career. I'm only a little jealous, but strong hair game.
Very
Yeah,
strong hair
I'm a
game.
little upset to see Danger go. He's one of those guys that I wrestled in college, unfortunately, and he beat the crap out of me. But
Which
and
year
it's one
was
of
that? Because if it was the third year, you didn't have a chance.
no, it was I think it was for his second title when he was third seed. I drew him first round, unfortunately, and I knew I had no shot. But I saw him running, like, 10 minutes before weigh-ins. I'm thinking, hey, maybe he'll miss weight and I'll get a forfeit. But that didn't happen. But the point I'm getting at is, he, he's one of those guys that probably one of the best guys I've ever wrestled. Just so strong, so good. I had no chance of doing that, and that's one of the worst I ever got my butt kicked in a real match. And it's I guess I'm at that age too, where all these guys I wrestled are moving on. And I think Daringer and is probably one of the last guys out there, at least in my boat. So yeah, congrats to him on a great career. And like you said, he's going to kill it in the coaching ranks. And maybe he remembers that match he had against me, but probably not. Nothing,
He
nothing really
remembers
happened.
just barely making weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He probably remembers the battle with the scale more than anything at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
I think
the
though the
Go ahead.
story at 79 though is like looking at the backside of that bracket as far as current NCAA guys go. There
That's
was
what I was
some
gonna get to. It was wild.
Yeah.
battles
Yeah.
back there. Um,
Carver's Monday as
multiple.
well.
Yeah, and there wasn't even a rap battle, so that's good.
Yeah. Did
That we
you
know
did
of.
you did you see how what was it? Haynes ended up beating O'Toole and then Haynes has no shot against Carr. Carr beats him 8-2, right?
Mm.
O'Toole rolled Carr up. And I mean, O'Toole looked enormous, by the way. He
Yeah.
looked every bit of 174. That's why in my preview, I was like, I think he's going to be healthy. I think he might be able to get to Chance. And, one arm spin later, and Chance is like, no, I'm going off to wrestle Burroughs again. But I'm like, O'Toole's going to be a problem, right? Like, obviously, the matches that we saw in freestyle or in folk style, we're gonna start seeing them. I wonder if Haynes ends up staying at 74, maybe going 65. I don't know, but like that's a potential NCAA final that we got a glimpse at this past weekend with O'Toole and Haynes. Haynes looked very big too. Look every bit of 174, and he was a late entry, and you were just like, man, where's he going to get drawn into the bracket? And he draws Burroughs, and Burroughs is like, no, I'm not like he's kind of like I've had it with the Penn State guys at this point. I have had it. I can't do it anymore. I'm just gonna get out here, do what I got to do, and win this match. And um, but yeah, that match with Haynes and O'Toole, I was very surprised at how Haynes handled O'Toole in that match because O'Toole looked really really good. He looked really good outside of his loss to Marsteller. He looked
I mean, he
amazing. You know.
almost teched Carr in the first 2 minutes of the match. He was
Yeah.
up 9-0. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, like you said, he's going to be problems. I think size wise, I was much more impressed by how much he seems to have filled out. I didn't think Haynes looked that big, but it's that weird Penn State scrawny strength. Like they're freakishly strong, but they don't look it. So
Yeah,
I don't know what
maybe
they're doing
because
in that
every
strength
guy he
program.
wrestled, though, every guy he wrestled, if you think about it, Burroughs bigger than him, Haynes clearly bigger than him, because Haynes is bigger, or excuse me, O'Toole clearly bigger than Haynes. O'Toole is probably bigger than Burroughs, I believe. He's
Yeah,
very tall, so like I just thought that Haynes filled into 174 very quickly after being what 57
yeah.
all year, right? So I wonder if we see him jump 2 weight classes as well and fill out, or if he drops back down to 65 or whatever else. I mean, maybe red shirts, who knows, right? I think he still has a red shirt left too. But yeah, I think that's a match that we could potentially see again in folk style, if not in freestyle for the years to come. But yeah, that was really impressive for me to see how Haynes handled a much larger and stronger and healthy tool. Austin, any thoughts on the rest of the field?
No, it's just like you said, it's just kind of fun to see a lot of those NCAA guys there, those younger guys that are still around. Hunter Garvin, All-American this year, hanging in there. Noah Mulvaney, my guy from Bucknell, and yeah, it's just good to see some of these guys wrestle and see where they fall and see some of these potential matchups. And Evan Wick is still wrestling, and he's could probably
Nine
dunk a
feet tall.
basketball a few times. So it's yeah, it's cool to see him
Wick
out there too.
and Wick and Monday wrestled, and I was like, these guys could easily be playing for the freaking Sixers. Like, look at this. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. They're
It's a lot
huge.
of length. A lot of length at that weight.
Tons of it. Speaking of big, let's head to the big boys at 92. Um,
I don't want to
David
talk about it.
David freaking Taylor. David freaking Taylor. Um, I mean, you should want to talk about it. Your ACC guys really showed out, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm still sad. It's okay though.
I mean, let's call it what it is. Trent Hidley, that was a battle with him and Taylor. And Taylor looked in some of these bouts, not just against not just against Trent, but also against Zahid in the finals in that first match, he looked tired.
Yeah. It looks like
And
he hasn't been competing. I
well,
mean,
not. I mean, it hasn't been that long. What it looked like is that being up and gaining the weight was really taking a toll on him. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, man, I don't know if he's gonna be able to continue right now, right? Like, this is tough on his body. He looked bigger and he looked like he filled it
he
out
looked
the weight.
huge.
He looked really big, and I'm like, I understand that these guys are bigger, but like I feel like he could match these guys strength for strength if he was just staying at his normal slim self, right? Like not
Hmm.
weighing in at 86, but not weighing in completely at 92 either. I feel like he was like, these guys have been at 92 for a while. I got to get bigger. I'm going to allow myself to be bigger. I'm sure he probably wasn't planning on even entering the tournament. until late, so he's probably eating a couple of cheeseburgers as well. Um, but no,
Same.
he was yeah, right. He was
It's how I go up a
big.
weight class too.
Yeah, he was big, man, and I was
But
like,
David
he
Taylor's
looks a little tired.
the only person I've ever seen who gains weight in their back. Like his back got wider somehow. And he's got a big ass back to start with. Like you got like a turtle shell back there and it just got wider. Um, I think you're right. I mean, there was definitely looked gassed. I think, and what I said, I think in our group chat is that, Trent pushes on that throttle 30 seconds earlier, and I think he's got a chance to win that match. Speaking just to Trent's being a crazy person and having insane pace at the end of matches. I think if he pushed, goes up to that last gear earlier, he might get through that because it was real close at the end.
I was
So
impressed by his underhook. I mean, obviously we've seen it a ton in folk style. His usage of it in freestyle was very different and
mhm.
very. I can't hang out here because when I hung out here against Yazdani, he made me pay for it. These
Yep.
guys will make me pay for it. I can't just hang out with the underhook.
What's impressive with it though, like he's not hanging out there, but he still controls the mat so well with it and uses it positionally to get where he wants to get, even if he's not hanging out in it. Because in folk style, he was able to hang out there and slowly set things up and get where he wanted with pressure. Like you're
Hmm.
saying, in freestyle, that's not going to work, especially when you got guys like Yazdani and people who live on their underhook. Um, so it was interesting to see him make that adjustment, but still be successful with it.
Yeah, agreed. Um, yeah, but I mean, overall, Taylor looked really good. He did look
Yeah.
good. He just
Turns out he's good at
he
wrestling.
he's very good at wrestling. I just think he looked gassed against Trent late, and he looked gassed against the Heat in the first one, going 3-3. But I mean that cradle, he's always gonna keep that ace in his back pocket, and he got the job done. Austin, your thoughts of 92? Any other guys stick out to you outside of the guys we've already spoken about?
No, just to touch on Taylor a little bit too. It was interesting to see him in the Cowboy Orange. You're just used to
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
him in, Penn State blue or, America red, white, blue. But yeah, just different look from him. And notice yeah, he looked a little bigger, a little gassed too. It makes you curious to see, how long ago did he decide to enter? Was he
Hmm.
just kind of wrestling and a week out? He's like, yeah, maybe I'll do it. And then a few days later he pulled the trigger, or was he kind of always planning this? And we'll probably never know that answer, but I'm curious to see, and maybe that's why in his interview he's saying, yeah, maybe I won't wrestle at Worlds. Maybe he didn't feel 100%. Maybe yeah, I don't know. Maybe he just did it on a whim, but yeah, it was fun to see that, and guys, it was good. And Heidley he's good. I think he's going to be the future one of the future guys in his weight class. Him and Valencia, they're going to have some good battles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his height though is gonna be a challenge at that weight just
Yeah,
because he is a shorter guy. So I think 86 is probably a better weight for him
yep.
size wise, but I think he could be successful at 92.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know when. I think David was training a little bit. I think he was very focused on coaching, but he was out on the mat and he was, you know, training, wrestling with guys, not to the extent that he would have to in order to be 100% peaking and ready to go. But I had heard that he had kind of tipped his hat to a couple of people and said, "Hey, I might be doing this." Um, and I'm sure that he had conversations with Oklahoma State and everything else about entering the World Team Trials. Whether or not they've had the conversations of him moving on is yet to be seen. But I think it was definitely well before a week or so before the tournament. And from the text messages that I've gotten, USA Wrestling probably knew about these things as well. Um, from the people that I've talked to at USA Wrestling. Um, you know, I think that there were certainly conversations where he was like, this is a possibility. Um, Now, whether or not he does wrestle, right? I think him saying I might not go to Worlds. I'm coaching is my number one focus. That was interesting to me, right? Because I'm thinking he doesn't want to go out on top of a weight class in the United States. He wants to go out on top in the world. Same thing with Burroughs. Like they want to be the guys that are on top of the podium and have their Peyton Manning moment of winning a championship and walking off and being done. So that was surprising to me. I think that what it really is that conversation hasn't been had yet, but the way that and this is something I also want to talk about, the response to him entering, where people were saying that it's a bad idea, but then the wrestlers like D Lockett saying that's my coach, right? That's awesome. And how the administration has embraced everything that David wants to do. I think that they support him because it's not like the coach's spot who he just took didn't do that. It's not like John Smith didn't compete when he
Mhm.
had a coaching job. It's not like Kale didn't compete when he had a coaching job, right? I'm sure David is tired of the Kale parallels, but it's called what it is. He competed in 2011 and he ultimately did it because he promised the guys he would do it. Well, and it had a very, different catalyst behind it. But I think that, David Taylor's like, maybe I should, just do this one last time, right? Like this may be my first year. Let's go one last time. And honestly, I don't think that him training right now and preparing with his team right now would affect March because the tournament, I believe, yeah, it's the week of my birthday, which is October 30th. So it's like that week
Way to
is
slide that
when
in there.
well, that's how I remembered it. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh
we
yeah, it
know.
is. Now, yeah. Now I expect a giant gift. Here's a
I
hint
got
of
you a
what you
pair
can
of shoes there
of
back
what you
there.
can buy me. There you
You
go.
have to pick which one I got you.
I got you a Falcons win last night. You're welcome.
You had nothing to do with that. That was all Drake
You don't
London
know that. You don't know that.
and everybody else. No, yeah, I would love to see him compete honestly at Worlds. I really would. So it was kind of surprising for him to say that, but I think that just it was a conversation probably of him saying, "Hey, I'm going to enter this tournament." And they were like, "All right, cool, we're behind you." And they probably said, "What happens if you make the team?" And he was like, "Well, let's cross that bridge when we get to it." Well, you're at that crossroads now, right? So, but I don't think that October doesn't affect March when it comes to coaching, right? It just doesn't, in my opinion. So we'll certainly see if he does. What were your guys' thoughts on Taylor's interview and his reasoning, even for jumping back into competition after saying he was done when he accepted the Oklahoma State job?
I kind of went back and forth on it. Like honestly, initially when I heard that, it kind of pissed me off because, here's my bias. If this is the situation and you know or you think you're not going to go to Worlds, then why even be there? Because now you're having this domino impact on everybody else in the bracket and their shot at getting to a world title. So to me, that just came across as selfish. After some conversations and kind of what you're saying makes more sense to me, and it's like lessened my reaction to it. I still didn't like that he put that out there in an interview. Like that's I don't think that's the time to broach that topic. Um, but I think it most likely is just a situation of I got to make sure that my admin's on board with this and we're fully supported because they're paying me a shitload of money to coach this
Mm-hmm.
team. So that needs to be my priority. But, there's no reason that he can't train and coach and recruit. I mean, he's young enough to be able to do all that together. But he also has a hell of a staff down there that can pick up the slack for him if he is training for the Worlds.
Especially for a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Not even that. It's like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Part of me
yeah, we're
one.
in the middle of recruiting, but at the same time, like that's not going to have that big of an impact on it. And realistically, the assistant coaches drive a lot of that anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and part of me wonders if he just said that in his interview because he thought that's the right thing to say. He's a brand new head coach. He's still trying to figure out how to say things politically, just to keep everyone happy, but keep especially his admin and his alumni and support his network happy because he wants them to feel, hey, coaching is still my number one priority. I haven't really thought about worlds. I just wanted to compete. Um, but like you guys were saying, we know damn well he's probably leaning towards that if his administration lets him.
Yeah.
So I think part of me is just saying, oh, he's just a young head coach trying to figure out how to talk and say the right things to keep everyone happy, not piss people off. But I agree with Robbie's point too. It's like if you knew you weren't going to go to Worlds, why would you compete? I feel like there is something to that he wants to compete. And if I'm a wrestler in that wrestling room with him, and then say, hey, my head coach is trained to be a world champion. Here's what he's doing every day. I'm going to mimic that because I want to be a world champion
Yeah.
too, right? So I think it's a plus for him and his team as well that he's coaching.
Yeah,
I
I
think,
heard. Go ahead, Robbie.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
I heard that there might be like a recruiting weekend or something the week of Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the only conflict, right? Like there might be some sort of recruiting conflict where he has to be or he should be being a coach at that point.
Is that like the week of Bedlam or something? Because they usually have
Probably,
big recruiting around that. I mean, it's
probably,
potential. That very well could be what it is.
yeah.
But like bigger picture, say he doesn't go, say admin's not supportive, then what? Now we have to re-wrestle this because they're not just going to give the spot to Zahid, right? Because he didn't have to contest it. So do they go back and then have what Trent, who he lost to in the wrestle off finals or the pre-tournament finals? Does he wrestle Zahid for the spot? Or do they just go to Zahid because he was sitting out of the challenge tournament?
I think it
It
would go to
just
Zahid, honestly. I
I
have no
think so
idea.
too. Yeah.
I think the way that it should go is that it's kind of a true second kind of a thing,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? To truly figure that out. And that might very well be how it goes, but like if you think about it, any other, final X, if there's a final X, these are the two guys that made the finals. Um, the guy that won the spot can't go. Like right, like Nashon and Joe Cologne.
Yeah.
Nashon made the team, gets injured. Joe Cologne goes because he was second. Right, he's the alternate.
Right.
It's why they wrestle to third place so that they know who's on the national team and they know who the alternates are and know who the training partners are, as well as the $6 stipend or whatever.
What we
Right,
decided was 1250.
12.50. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, so
As
yeah,
much as a dozen eggs.
I think it does go to the next guy in line. It does go to Zahid. Um,
I
but
also
my
don't think we're going to
hope,
have to cross that bridge. Like, I
I
don't think
don't
that's going to
either. I
happen.
really don't either. But hypothetically speaking, I wish that it was a wrestle off, right? I wish that it was Trent got a shot at it. Like, let's call it what it is. Like Trent lost to David Taylor. David goes on to beat Zahid. And did Trent end up? Yeah, Trent ended up taking second essentially in the challenge tournament, right? So he should be the one to at least be able to contest against Zahid since there is no true third in that regard or true second in that regard.
Right.
But I think that if Taylor's just like, I can't make it, I can't go, right? Like I'm gonna concede the spot. It'll go to Zahid. I think it is a next man in line sort of a thing.
Not like
Um,
that's a bad option. I mean, there's a reason he was sitting out. He's a medalist. So
yeah,
it's
he's a
it's
medalist.
it's in good hands.
Yeah, for
So
sure, for sure. But I would ultimately like to just see some, I guess, fairness in that regard. We already stacked the deck in favor of our medalist,
Mm-hmm.
so why not? When it comes to who's going to kind of take the spot of the guy who isn't going, why not? Allow for a wrestle off, because we've done it before. Yanni
mhm.
Zane, we've had arbitration and they're like, right, re-wrestle the match, right? So we've had other things that have happened um where matches are wrestled in neutral territories and things happen. So I don't know. Like I
How
said, I
awful of a job does it sound to be an arbiter? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just
right.
gonna
Like,
decide some dumb shit. Here you go.
yeah.
Sounds
So
terrible. Pass.
I think we do get a team that has Vito, James Green, Jordan Burroughs, and David Taylor. And I tell you what, I have I don't think I've ever been so confident in a team outside of when we have all 10 weight classes, right? When we have all 10 guys and these guys are in the mix at these weights. I don't think I've ever been more confident like before ever in the squad that we're sending. You're just
Yeah,
like, there's every single one of these guys has been in the world finals. Every single one of them has a world medal. What is it? I think
that is a
it's
squad.
it really is. I mean, there's three world champs, four world, they're all four are world finalists and two Olympic champions. Like there's no way that we don't come back with some serious hardware, if not everything gold, when you look at how this really truly is, right? So
Be a very apropos way for Burroughs to go out if the whole team wins gold. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah, him and
literally
Taylor can
everybody,
both leave
all
their shoes on the
everybody's
mat.
seeing is gold. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
James too, for that matter. I mean, is
Hmm.
Crazy going to keep going? How happy is he with that new hip?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I just like I said, and the next thing I want to jump to is we're talking about JB is his interview as well. He said some things during his interview that were things you knew he probably felt, but he
Mhm.
hadn't expressed in the months since the Olympic trials. And he has been completely dark when it comes to media. Anything that has been put out has been nothing but his own team or something Rudis or whatever else. I've reached out to him. I've talked to him since Olympic trials, probably a handful of times. Um,
I have
just
not.
I've talked to him a handful of times, asking him if he was ready to do an interview. Because I asked him after the Olympics if he wanted to do an interview to talk about his experience with being on the call and anything else, and what was he up to. But I mean, you could, and we talked about it so many times, you could see the writing on the wall that he was going to be at these trials. There were
Yeah.
so many times where he could have left his shoes on the mat, but you just knew that, it was a sour taste in his mouth. And, I think he was probably more upset that he lost to Jason Nolf than he was that he was heckled and that idiot said any of the shit that he said to him as he was walking into the tunnel. Um, and we don't have to rehash it, but that was just a sour way to treat one of our champions and one of the guys that has really helped build USA Wrestling to what it is. I saw somebody respond and say he hasn't helped build USA Wrestling to what it is. We just came back. We didn't have any gold medals at the Olympics and this, that, whatever. And it's like, yeah, but
You're a fucking idiot then.
like the standard that you currently have of saying we have
It's
medals, but none of
because of
them were
him.
gold is because of this man.
Yeah.
Like recognize that why the reason why you have this standard is because of the things that he was doing and the things that became a domino effect of him and James Green when James Green was wrestling Yazdani when Yazdani was a 70 kilogram guy in 2015 and bringing home bronze as well as Burroughs bringing home gold and Snyder bringing home his first gold against Godoy. Like all this stuff, like man, you got to understand the standard that this man set for us, where it was just like, no, Russia isn't just going to bully the shit out of us. It's not going to happen anymore, right? Like, and he did that. He set a standard. So you can try to poo poo it all you want. And, I saw a number of, and I don't even really want to call them Penn State fans. I just want to call them a bunch of spoiled brats, honestly, because the Penn State, I don't want to even, because I know the guys at Penn State and I know that they don't want to associate with their fans that act like complete assholes.
You
Um,
also know that a real fan compared to that fan too.
that
Like
type of
there's
spoiled
a
ass
clear
brat,
difference.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where they were most likely maybe a Penn State alum or they're just from Pennsylvania and they were Penn State football fans and they're like, "Oh shit, our wrestling team's also really good and we beat everybody. So now I'm going to be screaming we are Penn State all the time because I can." they were, saying he's playing the victim card. And it's like, guys, like he really was the victim in this. Like he
I was
doesn't,
standing right behind him when that guy was yelling at him. Like it
yeah.
this really happened, guys.
Yeah. So like call it what it is, but man, I love the fact that he truly opened up and he said that he hated wrestling and that he was not sure if he was going to come back. I think that it was always kind of a 70-30 type of a thing, but he, when you get treated like that by a fan base who isn't, not to say that they have to kiss the ring, but I mean, hell, acknowledge the fact that the reason that your team is as good as you are is because of the standard he set as well. Because all these guys came together to chase him, to literally chase him. So let's pump the brakes on it, and have some humility and realize that you were shitty to a man who did not deserve it.
I think even bigger than just what he's done on the mat, because if you look, from 2011 to now, the legacy that he has left, the things that he's earned, what he's built for USA Wrestling, hands down, like he is the building block. He is the base of the success that we've had in the last decade. There's no doubt about that. There's no arguing that. There's can't be much more clear than him putting that on his back and building this to what it is. But I think the more amazing thing about Jordan, and every time that I've spoken with him, it's been more of a conversation about who you are as a person, who you are as a father, who you are as a husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is my favorite thing about Jordan Burroughs is how open he is and how throughout this whole process, we've gotten to see everything. We've seen the growth of him as a human and as a wrestler. We've seen the growth of him as a husband, as a father. And I think it speaks to him as a human and him as a man that he allows that, but also that he encourages other people to kind of follow that. And I think it's also kind of cool that you can watch you can tell where he's at in his career by which kid he's holding and in his interviews. But I think we look back on this 20 years down the line, and if you can't see it now, like how important he has been on and off the mat for USA Wrestling, then you're fucking blind, really.
Yeah.
But when we look back on this 20 years from now, seeing that is going to be, measuring that impact is it quantifiable? It's amazing what he's done for this sport, and for him to be treated badly, it was like I didn't even get video of that because I was so stunned that anybody would have the balls to talk shit to Jordan Burroughs and say that he's done nothing, because the temerity it takes to do that is just mind blowing.
And also celebrate the fact that his career is over, right? As that guy tried to put it, your career is over. You should be thoroughly upset that this man's career is coming to a close. Just as upset as you are at Kyle Dake's career potentially coming to an end at some point, and David Taylor's career coming to an end at some point. He literally kept multiple time NCAA champions off of the Olympic and world team. Who and
Now multiple time world and Olympic champions.
Exactly. Like the fact that these guys bred a lot of their training and changed a lot of their training because the best person in the world was in their backyard and somebody that they had to beat. It's transcendent for the sport. Everybody gets really, really pissed off about, and like I said, we've talked about it so many times about everything that Bo Bassett is doing. The shit that Bo Bassett is doing right now does not happen if there's no Jordan Burroughs, and does not happen if there's no David Taylor and these guys that became marketable. If there is no Blast Double, if there is no All I See Is Gold, if there is no Magic Man, KD4, all of these things happen because of the catalyst. It has to come from somewhere. These people just didn't say, oh, wrestling's a really cool sport. No, Jordan Burroughs started winning. And our team started to get better. And medals started to be collected by every single weight class. The only weight class I think we haven't collected a medal in well, I think Yanni got the what was it, world silver at 65. But all the other weights, we are consistently collecting medals, consistently having guys go deep into these tournaments where they're competing for medals. Give credit where it's due, you know? So no, you know that it has to come to an end at some point with all of these guys. But man, like complete salute to each one of them. We talked about Ringer taking his shoes off, amazing NCAA champion. Burroughs is one tournament away, I believe, one winning tournament away from doing the same. David Taylor, who knows if we see him at Worlds. Kyle Dake, I know he wanted to compete at 79, but Olympians aren't allowed. So who knows what happens there. But there's a new crop of guys coming. And I think we're in really, really good hands. But we're in good hands because of the things that Jordan Burroughs started and Kyle Dake and Kyle Snyder and David Taylor have continued to push to do. But it's really hard to match a guy that had just made his 12th world team and can potentially win his 11th medal.
Yeah, he was kind of on the front end of being, marketing the sport and marketing yourself, right? He kind of proved that, hey, wrestling never really money involved with the sport, but you can make that happen. He makes a heck of a living wrestling, and then he has endorsements and everything outside of that, right? He's been on like Chobani commercials, and when he won his gold, he was making his rounds. I mean, the man was on the Joe Rogan podcast. It was,
Yeah.
whether you like Rogan or not, he's one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Just even that alone is a really cool feat. It's just you guys have already preached about it, but the stuff he did on the mat and even off the mat is so good for the sport, and it's coming to an end. It's going to be sad when that day comes.
And let's be
I
thankful that
mean,
he didn't leave us to go to MMA as well, as most
yeah.
guys
Yeah,
are doing.
Well,
He stayed an
let's
advocate of
thank
the sport.
Lauren that he didn't go to MMA.
Yeah. Yeah. She
Let's
did
be
not want
real
to see
here.
him get punched in the face. Yeah,
Mhm.
she's
To be
as
fair though,
much
his face gets pretty beat up anyway.
oh
So
it
yeah,
does. It does. But as much praise as we give him, we have to give it to his wife because she's the tough one. She
they
really
always
is.
are. Don't let my
She's
wife always said that, but
she,
it's always that way.
she's the tough one, and hats off to wrestling wives everywhere because this is not easy to do, whether you're on our side of the table where we have to travel to all these things that they're doing, or being on the other side where their, significant others are competing. It is tough. It's really tough to do. Um, but man, it is certainly this weekend was certainly a sight to see. And it was a small, condensed tournament, but there were so many eyes. There were so many people talking about it. Everybody was just like glued to it. And it was awesome, right? It was really, really great. I think that USA Wrestling could have done better when it came to the venue. Um, but that's what they do. The US Open was in the almost an identical place. The only difference was that it was like bowl seating, so it was a little bit more of an arena for the US Open here in Texas this year, but no Wi-Fi as everybody was talking about. The mats were on concrete floor. Everything else was virtually the same. Um, I would love to see the presentation get better, especially for the people that we have that we're putting out there on the mat. Um, and especially because most of these guys, while they do get a USA Wrestling stipend, most of their money's coming from the clubs. It's not coming from USA Wrestling. Um, and I'm not trying to bash USA Wrestling, but it's just like the sport has grown. We know what kind of money is in the sport. Not say there's a ton of it, but there's enough to the point where we're not worried about potential safety of our biggest and baddest athletes. So, from a venue standpoint, like I said, I was at the US Open and I got there and I was like, oh, great. Like, there's no Wi Fi. I have to get a connector to get onto the internet to do anything. And I checked my, I was like, oh, well, shit, I don't have one. So I'm going to do the best that I can and did the best that I could, but went back to my hotel to get work done because I couldn't get on the internet there until I could like borrow somebody else's to connect to the internet. So, you know, Willie said this as well on him and Bosch's show. It's not a gripe saying the media needs internet, even though we do. The coaches are coming up to us and saying, "Hey, what Wi-Fi are you connected to? I can't pull up the brackets. When is this going to happen? When is that going to happen?" We were very far removed from the old school taping up the brackets on the wall, so they shouldn't have to be standing in front of a screen to figure out when their wrestler is coming up, right? Like they should be able to set the reminders and be able to use the technology that we have. So I would love to see us do better in that regard, especially when we have guys like Jordan Burroughs and David Taylor and James Green competing. Like,
What's tough too is
better.
that we know we can do it. We know we've seen it with Final X, with Olympic trials. We know we can get that product out there and we can have the showcase that we need and that they deserve. So, I mean, I don't know how much of it was them feeling like it needed to be in Nebraska, but at the same time, like go to Lincoln, put that in the Coliseum, put it in Devaney where they have their matches, and you've got a sweet environment, and it's built for that instead of a Coliseum or a convention center in Omaha. Like you can get the same location with better options, and that's you know we've will continue to have this in perpetuity until it changes, which we'll see if it ever will. But we shoot ourselves in the foot so many times as a sport as far as marketing goes, and we need to fix that. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know who to talk to, but I think we can do better for the people who do so much for our sport.
I mean, that's kind of why Final X was created.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fortunate enough to be in those conversations when it was being created of like we can showcase our sport better. We can give more to the fans. We can allow fans to have a chance to see the baddest, the biggest and baddest in our sport and just be around it, right? Because you can go to an NFL game, you can go to a basketball game, but to sit at a world team trials all day long is it's a lot. That's a lot to ask fans to do.
Especially casual fans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why those things were created, and Final X might not be perfect, but it's a model that has helped us be a little bit more marketable. It's allowed us to up the ante when it comes to production and do a little bit more so that fans kind of all over the country possibly have a chance to see these wrestlers up close and personal. So, ultimately, I think that the fact that there were four weights and instead of 10, and it wasn't, and it's the non-Olympic weight. I think there's a lot of factors that went into let's continue to be cheap, like USA Wrestling is. Um, but I would just love to see them do better, right? Whether that is, you know, I know how much flow is involved with things and how much they would probably love to blow things out of the water and do even more for it and everything else. And um, also, something else that could certainly help marketing, have a cutoff date of entrance,
Mm-hmm. So you can actually market
like
the bracket.
allow
Weird.
things
Wasn't
to
an
be
idea.
marketed, right? Like there were just, I like I said, I sent a text and I was like, "Hey, is there a cutoff date for entries?" And I was told no, there's not. Um,
When the scale opens, if you step on, you're good.
Basically, so as long as you're entered, before maybe a certain time, but there really wasn't a cutoff date. Um, So no, I mean, like I said, I would love for us to have more eyes, to be a lot more mainstream, as much as we possibly can be. We definitely have MMA that we can piggyback off of. We definitely have jujitsu that we can piggyback off of, but we're just not doing it for some reason, and I don't know why. Even though The eyes on the sport have certainly grown. They've definitely grown thanks to, like we said, Jordan Burroughs, David Taylor, Kyle Dake, Kyle Snyder, Yanni, the NCAA level of wrestling as well. But man, it just, as good as the competition was, the presentation was just not good. It was just not good. It was like serving somebody filet mignon out of a paper bag, and it just didn't work in
Still
that
tastes good, but it just
regard.
doesn't look as good.
It was
That's fair.
still it was still an awesome meal, but it just did not look appetizing whatsoever. And I know, like I said, I've been in those conversations. I know what kind of production flow can do when there's time. So, um, any other thoughts on the trials? I know we didn't speak about Greco and women, but those matches were very good as well. But I think they were probably a little bit more predictable. Um, even though
Yeah, there
we
wasn't
did
a
go
whole lot
four
of
for four on our
crazy
picks, there wasn't
upsets.
there
No.
wasn't a lot of crazy on that side of things. But any other little comments you guys have on world team trials or heading to worlds or anything else before we wrap
Shout
things
out
up?
to the 44-year-old making the world team. I'm 40 and it hurts to get up in the morning sometimes. So can't imagine training and competing at a world level. Um, but no, in all reality, it's great to see him kind of break through. He's been on the edge, like you said, kind of going with Kamal a lot. So
Mhm.
it's nice to see him get a chance to rep the world team. It's a really cool story with Kikinau, however you say the name. I'm not good with pronunciations,
Yeah.
but
Austin, any final thoughts?
No, I'm gonna go back and watch all these matches I kind of missed. I kind of just saw highlights and a few of the main matches there, so I just don't have much time these days with two little kids. But
wait till
no
you have three,
excuses. I'm gonna go
boss.
back and watch my film and study up. And yeah, it was just the stuff I saw. It looked really fun, and I think you nailed it with the atmosphere. I think it could have been a little better. Just the convention center vibe. It just doesn't seem like wrestling to me. Just Holmes, where we grew up, wrestling was a big deal. Every match we went to
Very.
was fans were packed, they were nuts, and it's just crazy atmospheres. And it's going to something like that at a high level event just seems weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Would certainly love to see more being done for our premier events. Like if we are deciding a world team or an Olympic team, it should be showcased as such. All other Olympic sports do that, and I know there's more Nike money that goes into track and field than wrestling, but like, come on, we can do better. It's we're on the verge of a new year in 2025. We're a couple months away from it, and I think we know that the revenue has continued to grow because the marketability of these athletes has continued to grow. They're doing a lot better. I mean, we're at a point where being a wrestler and a wrestling coach is a sustainable profession. No
Yeah,
longer do these guys need to work a part-time job to facilitate their wrestling competition, being competitors. So unless they want to, you know, unless they actually want to, like any other guys that we've seen in the past, right?
so you don't have to sell Advocare on the side anymore, but you don't have a
Yeah,
coaching job there for that. So that's that.
exactly. The money, the math is math, and the money's doing very well. So hopefully we start to see production values go up, and you know, allowing things to run a little bit more smoothly. Um, but that's all we got. That is it. We appreciate everybody for listening, watching, questioning, making fun of us, whatever you do, just continue to
All of
watch,
the above.
challenge us, all the above. We appreciate all of it. We're gonna start to work on some preseason NCAA wrestling stuff. The calendar came out today for us, and all of the content that we're going to be working on. There's going to be a ton of video, there's going to be a ton of articles, there's going to be breakdowns of schedules, coach interviews, wrestler interviews, previews of the season, big storylines, weight changes, you name it. We're going to be digging into a whole bunch of things coming very, very soon. But if you
Holmes, do
guys
we
that
want to
are,
sorry, do we want to tease our little
we
thing we got
can,
coming up or
we can. We've been putting in some work, Austin and I, the last couple of days,
Well, I've been
and
teased. I don't know about this either.
yeah,
ooh,
there's been some work. There's going to be an announcement that is coming. We won't say what conference. We won't say that. We won't say what team. But there is some news that is going to be coming that Austin and I have been working on. Kind of a tag team, if you will. He's got the written part. I've got the video part of it. So be on the lookout for that. Coming Thursday is when that will be dropping on Intermat. So Thursday morning, set your clocks for a little bit of an announcement. So things are definitely starting continuing to grow. Austin got the inside scoop on that. So props to you, Austin, for being on top of that and being in the know and getting to the people that have the info and bringing me in to kind of help you break that news. So be on the lookout for some news there. But like I said, we've got a lot more content that's going to be coming with the season right around the corner. Really, really looking forward to it. And also the recruiting news. If Marcus Blaze decides that he wants to stay in Ohio and go to Ohio State, we will have the news for you right here on Internet. Well, yeah, continue to send questions, continue to make fun of us. I don't really give a shit. Um,
Fair.
just continue to watch, listen, learn, and challenge us because we love it.